Hi, I'm Bill. Welcome to CP Talks. As this season is called The Ripples, and we'll be diving into the effects of your choices and the people around you and how their decisions affect you as well. We hope you enjoy it and see value and gain value in it, and make sure to like and to follow, and we'll dive right in.
Well, here we are again for another week of CP Talks, season The Ripples. And joining with us today, we have Curtis and Stephanie, and we'll be diving into their ripples and sort of what put them here and how they got here. So we'll start off with Curtis. If you could just walk us through a little bit of your story as far as the start all the way up until you landing in this chair with me today. Go from there.
Well, first I want to thank Crosspoint CP Talks for having us. It's pretty cool setting up here, but I don't know how I got here to Crosspoint is a crazy story. I mean, we're talking ripples, you know. I've been a drug addict. I mean, mostly my whole life. You know, I didn't wake up one day, raise my hand, and say, you know, I want to be a drug addict and ruin the rest of my life. It happened, and I went through my late teens, all my 20s, all my 30s, you know, in my own prison. And, you know, it all started with alcohol. You know, it was acceptable to drink at my house. And so I did that at a young age, and it just progressed from there. I believe that addiction is a disease. It's cunning, baffling, powerful, and fatal, just like cancer. And then that's exactly the path. I should say that's exactly the way it happened to me. It started progressing at a very young age. So you know, I had people around me trying to help me, and I just didn't want it. You know, I didn't accept it, and I just, you know, progressed from alcohol to cocaine to, you know, crack and heroin, and ended with heroin and meth. A good 26 solid years of addiction, and I was hopeless at the end. I had no hope. You know, I had no faith in Jesus, zero. Didn't even know him. I just knew the name that was said. I was, you know, somewhat of a fan, standing on the outside of the fence looking in. And I went to rehab, you know, one time, you know, and you know, I'm leaving a lot out, but, you know, some things happened to me, and I ended up on life support in Uniontown Hospital the beginning of April 2021. And in those last couple months that I was in the end of my addiction, I had a friend that came to Crosspoint that was calling me while I was still getting loaded. And she kept saying, I found this amazing church. You gotta come. You gotta come. And I almost did one day before I went to rehab. And I tell you what, God stepped in and did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I hit that telephone pole at 80 mile an hour. The telephone pole come through my windshield. I survived it. I was on life support. And he orchestrated something that, you know, I look back on now that was just so powerful and amazing. I end up in rehab in Uniontown, and I meet Stephanie. Two broken souls that just, you know, both of us were hopeless. I was, at least. And I don't even know the connection. I don't know how it happened. If I sat here and told you I knew, I would be lying. But we just, out of 40 people in this room, men and women, we gravitated together, and we left that program together. And I called Charity, and Charity said, or I think Charity called me, and I said, hey, let's go to this church in Carmichael's. And, you know, I came here the first time. Was it the first time that we seen the guest pastor?
Oh,
I walked in these doors for the first time, and I was sitting in the back, and there was a guest pastor up here, and he was from Pittsburgh. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about. He was giving his sermon, and he stopped dead in his tracks over on the left side of the stage. And let me back up a little bit. At this point in time, when I'm sitting in the crowd in the back, my first time here, we're thinking about helping some people, because when we got out of rehab, there was a lot of people getting out that was homeless, had nowhere to go. Their family didn't want them. Nobody wanted them, just like nobody wanted me. And I said, I have a home. I'm going to bring these guys into my home. I'm not going to let them go back on the street. And so we did that. When we come here that day, and this guy said, listen, he stopped dead in his tracks. He was like, I was putting on my cufflink on my shirt this morning. He said, and God spoke to me. And he said, there's someone in the crowd that is wanting to help people. He said, and God told me to tell you, run with it. You remember that? I tell you what, I had full body goosebumps. He said, whoever, if you're in this crowd, you raise your hand, man. And I threw my hand up. You know, mind you, this is my first time in this church, or in a church that I even accepted. And that was my spiritual experience. That's when I accepted that there was a God, and, you know, I have to start seeking him. And then birthed the Hope House through Crosspoint. And, you know, that's how it happened. And now, you know, we have a house of 10 guys and manage 2 other houses with women and men, and now looking to plant in Waynesburg eventually in the Greene County area to help souls like us, man, the broken, the lost, you know, and I don't walk around hiding it. I just don't hide my brokenness, and neither do you. And I think that's what's unique. I don't want to hide it, because I'm still broken today. You know what I mean? I struggle with depression, anxiety. You know, I'm now coming up on 16 months sober next week, and I still struggle. I struggle, you know, on a daily basis. You know, this is a daily reprieve for me, and it's really hard sometimes. But without this place, and you know, I'm not trying to blow up anybody's ego or anything, but without this place, I probably wouldn't be alive today. So that's how I got here. You know what I mean? My story goes much deeper in addiction. I can get real dark with it, but that's how her and I got to Crosspoint.
Okay. Yeah, so you two met, came to Crosspoint, and then Stephanie, sort of your perspective on the other side of what Curtis just shared. Yeah, of how you got here and what that looked like from your perspective.
Yeah, you know, so I spent many years in addiction too, you know, and mine ended with alcoholism after about 25 years. And I was basically going to die. You know, they told me, I got sober in May, and they told me in November, you're just not going to come back this way. You know, I was spiritually dead, but like I was physically dead when I came in here as well. I lost my kids, you know, I lost jobs. I couldn't hold a job. I was just broken in every way. And the only thing I had left when I left rehab was my apartment. But I knew if I went back there, I knew it was a suicide mission. I was going to kill myself, you know, because, and I had a moment of clarity at some point that, like, alcohol wasn't killing me fast enough. Like, so if I was going to live, I had to change my ways, you know. So, you know, like you said, we came to this church, and but let me back up a little bit. When I was in rehab, my mom, she had passed away about 5 years prior, and she had, you know, like, her faith was just like, it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before, you know. So I grew up in a church, but it was just very, like, rigid. Like, I saw people, you know, doing what they said they were going to do, like, in the church, but, like, as soon as they walked out the doors, they were doing something different. So I just really didn't know how I felt about the whole, like, religion thing. So but when I was in rehab, I started praying, but it was like I was praying to God through her, because I just didn't know how I felt, you know. So 3 days in a row, like, I got, like, physical signs in there, you know. And one day in there, you know, I literally, like, saw, you know, like, God, like, showed up and, like, pulled me out of hell. And, like, from that day on, I just all the obsession of the bondage that I had for like 25 years was just removed from me, you know. And I didn't know when I left there what I was going to do to stay sober. I just wanted the emotional pain to stop, you know. And so, like you said, like we came here, and I mean, the people here, just like the way that they accepted us, but it was just such a transformation in my heart, you know. I just like wasn't the same again, and like without this place, the people here, the way they accept me, and you know, like I've tried reading the Bible before, and I just could never understand it, you know. And so it just I don't know, the way my life's changed, and just the person, I'm just not the person that I was before, you know. And it's just an amazing thing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So here you are, the Hope House, 16 months sober. Is that right? 16. Yeah. So up to this point, the ripples of your choices really have affected people around you in more of a negative way than a good one, right? And now here you are starting to turn that corner, that moment that you came to Crosspoint, and the speaker on the stage had a pathetic word, and you said yes in that. So then you started to create sort of waves or ripples that would push against those, right? So if I could sort of walk us through a little bit about what that looks like, right? Because like Jordan said today, everybody has consequences for their actions, for their ripples, whether it's good or bad, right? So the people around you were affected in a negative way because of your choices. But how has it been them watching this transformation in life? And was there any like negativity, like, oh, it's not going to stick, it's not going to work, wasting your time? Like, how did you combat those kind of things?
For me, the stigma of addiction is terrible. I would like to break it. You know, yeah, I was chalked up as a failure. I was chalked up when we left rehab. They both told us, "You'll never make it." You know, and at that point in time, I didn't see. I was in the storm, and how you just described it put a picture in my head. Like I was in a storm, the perfect storm, but not all the ripples were not rippling, you know, in a good way. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the words to describe. The waves were not gentle. It was a nasty storm, and I had so much to clean up. You know, I was in prison. You know, I got charged for another man's death. And you know, when I was in the middle of that storm, I couldn't see past my addiction. I really didn't believe I was hurting anybody else besides myself. But that is the biggest lie from hell. Because once I got sober, I can now see that my decisions affect everybody around me. Everybody. You know, and that's hard to change. That's really hard to change because you know, I'm 43 years old, and it's, you know, that many years in active addiction, making that kind of chaos. You know, it's hard to change. And without Jesus on my side, man, I tell you what I did forget to say was when I was in rehab, I rolled over out of bed, and I fell to my knees, and I looked up and I said, Jesus, if you're real, please remove the obsession to use, and I'll give you 100%. And that's exactly what he did. I have not been obsessed to use or drink for 16 straight months. And I tell you what, the ripples from coming here for me was exactly what Pastor Jordan said this morning. If I put myself aside, I'm making tsunamis, man. But when I bring my selfishness and self-centered back into the picture, I don't want to do anything, you know. And I don't know, it's a crazy ride. It is really a crazy ride. But every choice has consequences, and we're dealing with negative ripples right now, both of us, you know. I don't want to speak for Steph, but she lost her children. Now she's, you know, fighting custody battles, you know, not really fighting them, just, you know, doing it the right way, and that is affect consequences from our past. I just had to sit through a homicide trial as a witness, you know, and that is a huge ripple of my past. And there's just so many, the trust thing, and people don't trust you, and, you know, the guilt and shame that I carry around from my parents never seeing me sober, never, since I've been like 17 years old, and they're both passed now. So there's a lot of negative ripples, man, but since the day I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart, I feel like there was a shield built around me, and I can combat those ripples.
All right, Steph, what about you? What does that look like for you as far as personally trying to combat the negative ripples within your own life?
You know, like Chris spoke on, you know, like I had, like I remember when I was like 30 days sober, and I wanted my kids back. I wanted everything back, you know, and people told me, like, you just got to stay sober one more day, and I would get so frustrated, like, what do they know, you know what I mean? And like, you know, it was so frustrating me because I thought at that stage I could be a mother again, and that was like so untrue because I was still so sick myself, you know. And it was a lot of prayer and acceptance, like, and just trusting, like, that there was a plan, you know, and as I've like gone through this and continued to do the right thing and just like trust in God, and He has revealed Himself, like, and just like it's been so amazing because, you know, like so for my oldest son, there was an emergency custody order. I had to have supervised visits since 2018. So the way the visits were set up, it was like you know, I'd had to see him with my family. It was like impossible because, you know, they went to Florida, and then my sister had 3 kids of her own. It was like impossible to see him the way I wanted to see him. And so I went to like the custody hearing, and it was like a battle. They didn't want to see it. They didn't want me to see him on holidays. You know, it was just like kind of ridiculous, but it was all something that I had to accept because it was what I did, you know, and I had to accept that just because I'm sober, they don't have to be happy for me. They don't have to congratulate me. They don't have to, you know, like me. You know what I mean? I did damage to them, and they have every right to feel the way they feel about me, you know, and that's something that I have to accept. And so, you know, but so I'm like praying through this, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm thinking I'm kind of entitled to this stuff, and I'm not, you know. And then, you know, here I'm wanting, like, fighting because I want more than what I'm getting, and then here through all this I get like shared physical custody back, you know. So that's how like God reveals Himself to me, like, you're worried about a day a week, but here, let me show you, I'm going to give you something bigger, you know. And so you know, it's just about, I've learned so much accepting, and just my trust in Him has just grown so much because it's just, you know, He's just revealed Himself to me, you know. So it's just really about faith for me, you know.
You know how we combat the negative ripples today for both of us is staying sober one more day.
Mm-hmm.
This is the hardest battle I ever battled in my life, but it is definitely worth it. And that's how we make our amends in battle. You know, I keep my head and my heart where my feet is, and that's the best defense we have. There's days that I would look at the situation that I'm facing and think, you know what? If I was high right now, I wouldn't have to go through this. You know what I mean? And then that's when God reveals Himself to me. He shows up in my life, and I remember that that the obsession is removed, and that is just so amazing to me. You know, the obsession, because that's what most of us drug addicts go out with. We get obsessed to use, and there's no turning back. And 95% of the time, if you ever ask a recovering drug addict, where was Jesus in your life when you left? He didn't have Him. He didn't have Him.
So you made a comment there about I lost it. Dang it. One of the things you just said there. No. Well, anyways, I look at it because I too come from a background of addiction as well, right? So I think in some ways that's sort of the the connection and the draw between the three of us, right? Maybe I didn't struggle with the same thing, and people watching, maybe they don't struggle with the same thing, right? But addiction can come in all different shapes, sizes, and looks. Some people are able to hide it better than other people, right? Whether it's drugs or whether it's gambling or whether it's porn, like addiction takes all different shapes and sizes, right? Somebody who is on the fence or somebody who is struggling currently, because this is the other side of it, right? So the way you were raised or your family background or where you lived and that kind of stuff, did that play any part or have any effect on the choice? Because you made the comment that it was acceptable to drink, right? Did that play any role in that?
Huge role. Huge role. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I look at your family, like, I wasn't raised like that. I think environment, is very, very, very big in addiction. Like in my family, again, it was acceptable to drink, and they talk about weed being the gateway drug. It is not. I believe, and this is just my belief, this isn't coming out of the big book or the Bible or anything like that. I believe that with every addict, there was a trauma that they're trying to get over. My trauma was being molested for 3 straight years. I didn't realize that. And now, throughout some counseling, that I had to stop because she brought it to light, and dealing with PTSD as an adult over that, I realized, now I'm not going to say that is the only reason, because I did choose to do the drugs and alcohol and gambling and porno. There's not a single thing I wasn't addicted to, but I was trying to run because I did not feel, I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel like a normal kid, after that happened to me, and it still affects me to this day. But my belief in every addict, there was some type of trauma, whether it was, being verbally abused by your father, not fitting in, not feeling wanted, and all I want to do is be accepted. And that was the big key point about this church, because when we walked into this church, immediately I felt loved and accepted. Am I not correct? Mm-hmm. And I never felt that before. And also, when I walk into an Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, or Life Recovery Bible Study over here, I feel like I'm with my people. I feel like I'm with my people, man, and there's no better feeling. I didn't feel that all through high school. I tried to fit in with people I didn't belong with. I just wanted to be accepted. I never told my parents I loved them, never. I just didn't. You know what I mean? I just hid. I hid. After all that, as a child, it just wrecked my emotional disorder. My emotions, man. I didn't know how to react. So once I brought that to light and started working on it a little bit, and I realized, I'm not just I just didn't choose to go get high and ruin the rest of my life. I've lost trucking companies. I've lost a lot of things in my life. I restarted many times. That's a good one too, about restarting in your 40s. It's a big, big, big discussion between her and I. It's not easy being 44 and learning how to live life again.
I guess I never really thought of it, because essentially you're resetting
emotionally, physically, mentally, and it's really hard, man, because I go back to living like a child. Me and Pastor Josh get in little arguments about things like commitment here and there. I never held a commitment in my life. Now I get sober, I take on every commitment that someone asks me to do, and I can't do them all. And it's it is disturbing. But that is I don't know. I like it. You know, there's no better way of life than this way of life.
So, Stephanie, somebody could be watching this at any point, struggling with the very things that you and Curtis have just walked out of and walking. What would you encourage them? How would you sort of point them and say, you truly want it's possible? But what would you say that one point, yes, or that one stop? Because we're all one decision away from building our life or wrecking it. I don't care who you are. That's the case, right? So somebody could be at the point that they're maybe contemplating using, or they're contemplating ending it, or they're contemplating giving it all up and making the same change that y'all did. What would you say to them?
I mean, I think for the longest time, you know, I didn't know there was a way out. You know, I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know about all the resources out there, the help out there, you know, and honestly, like, my biggest thing was like withdrawal, you know what I mean? And that's not what I wanted to go through. And you just have to simply like surrender, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not all about like just, like, our lives aren't going to just change just like this. I didn't get here. I did it one day at a time, you know what I mean? But just surrender, you know, and the help is out there, you know. And like I said, I mean, there's places that you can go to detox and to, you know, a lot of people just don't want to go through the sickness is really what it is. I mean, for years that kept me sick. It was just like, I wanted to stop. I just didn't know how, because I didn't want to go through that sickness. But, you know, it's like, you just surrender and, you know, pray and just reach out for help. And there's so many people. I mean, our lives, I mean, are like 14 hours a day just constantly helping people, you know what I mean? And so there's multiple people out there. Just reach out and ask for help, and you know, the help's out there.
So for me in addiction, it was like I spent the hours that I was awake trying to figure out how I was going to get my next. Whether it was Coke or pot or drinking, it didn't matter, right? I spent my time trying to hustle or figure that out, right? In y'all's background, I would assume that you would probably agree with that. What have you found, or how did you replace that? Because we all have addictive personalities, right? And it could be to church, or it could be to shopping or whatever. But what did you use to replace that?
Yeah. I mean, that's really what we do. I mean, you know, it's like when we first got sober, you know, like our day before our mind could even start, we literally turned on worship music before we could even have that first thought, because we know where, like, you know, when you wake up, like when you're in addiction, you know what your first thought is. So, you know, before we could even have that first thought, he was like blaring, you know, worship music, you know what I mean? And then it was like, we would just.
Don't get it twisted, she hated it at first.
Well,
She's
because
like, why are you waking
because it was like 6 in the morning. I'm trying to sleep in.
To be
you know
honest
what I
with
mean?
you though, like, worship music is what I still use. Because music drove a lot of my thoughts and my feelings to put me into those places that said, I don't like myself, or I hate myself, or whatever. So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Way of thinking. You have to.
Total
So,
transformation.
It's total transformation.
Total.
And you know, and then, you know, we just started going out and helping people just to get out of yourself. You know what I mean? Because, you know, and that's what we still do to this day, like constantly, you know?
You know, and this isn't even just talk, because you could call any one of my family members and they will tell you a complete and total transformation happened in my life. And you could probably call any one of Stephanie's family members and they will testify to who we are today. And if you ask me really how I got here and how we got here, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's definitely God.
I have no clue. I know that you know, before I actually accepted Jesus into my heart and really felt that transformation, my sponsor told me, you're going to come to a decision to where you're either you're going to want to be addicted to drugs, or you're going to want to be addicted to Jesus. You know what I mean? And he said, because all you're trying to do is fill a God-shaped hole with everything else besides God. And it doesn't work. And I didn't know what he meant at the time. And then coming here, and what attracted us was the lights and the sound, and I was worshiping the people here at first, and I remember one day, not long ago, well, a little while ago now, that the lights faded, the fog went away, and it was like I've been here before. And I remember, but it happened to us about at the same time. And we started reading the Bible. And that was the first time I cracked the Bible open and actually read it on my own in my entire life. And then, I registered for DSOM. And that's how you say it, correct? PDSOM. Okay. So I registered for PDSOM. And, I felt so overwhelmed and that I wasn't good enough to do it. And, who was going to listen to me? Some junkie, and I made a decision, actually just out there talking to Dennis, that I'm gonna get back into it this September and really give it a shot, because that's where all my life comes from. That's how all this is built.
Yeah.
Getting out of the way.
Well, funny story is, like, we've had a dog, 2 ducks, and a cat that we could not take care of, seriously.
Come on
But
now.
now, like, but we have a 3-quarter house, like we're running a men's and a women's house, like all this other stuff. But we can't take care of these pets. So, like, anybody that's doubting that this is God, you know what I mean? This is not us doing any of this,
So I'm sitting here thinking, and I was wanting to talk to you about, like, your Bible reading and praying. So it's funny you brought that up. In regards to Bible reading and stuff, I would assume up until that point, at some point coming here, you didn't. And like you said, you've never read the Bible, and I would assume that that'd be true for you as well, Stephanie. And then, what is it that sort of drives you to want to continue to read into it, or to buy into it, or to believe it?
Well, first of all, this church, how we play, how the pastors and the leaders here are so passionate about Jesus Christ. And my first Bible reading was really on these screens, and then the story would be told, and it would click in my head that I heard that before, and it made me start to wonder. It really made me start, like, I gotta read that, and then we turned around and started Life Recovery Bible here with your help, and that is a big part of my reading weekly, you know what I mean, and that's kind of why we did it. That is a big part of my recovery. We have a little saying in recovery, and that's what happened here with, Pastor Josh, Pastor Jordan. I've spent time with you talking about Jesus, and what the saying in recovery is, if you stay long enough, you will be contacted. And I stayed long enough to be contacted and accept the word into my heart. And I think that, and that's what I was saying a little bit earlier, you can't just be attracted to, the lights and the pastors. At first I was worshiping Pastor Josh. I mean, it just is what it is. It's embarrassing to say, but that's who my God was. But I needed God with skin on it when I came out of rehab. I needed that spiritual guidance, and I still need it today. I see you weekly. I talk to Josh daily. I'm building relationships here at this church that are unbreakable, and frankly, I can't even believe it's happening to me. Because 16 months ago, no one wanted me in their home or even around them.
Sobering moment, right? To just imagine that the Lord is allowing you to sort of bounce back from that, right? Almost have like a Samson moment, if you think about it, right? Samson went and did some things, and he lost his walk and his ability to do what God called him to do. But then he is allowed to come back for that one moment, right? And we here at Crosspoint, and all the men that you affect, we get to see that moment lived out day in and day out. And it truly, my hat's off to you. and Stephanie both for what you do and the commitment that you make, right? And the ripples that you're making. Yeah, some of the guys don't buy into it in your houses, right? And you have to make some pretty tough choices. Well, they make the choices and you have to sort of the repercussions of their choices. But what's that like, or how do you deal with that? Because you have truth, you bring them to places that have truth, but yet you get to watch them sort of make the wrong decision or don't say yes to that and fall right back into it. So how do you keep going or dealing with that?
Sadly, it's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? And like I've had this conversation with somebody before. Like, it's very sad that we're used to that. Do you know what I mean? That like that's just our part of our life. You know what I mean? And part of this disease. Definitely, we're always praying for them because like they can walk out of there, and a couple of our guys have died. We just talked about that this morning. Like in these 13 months that we've. It's probably longer, more like 14 or 15 months, but whatever, you know what I mean? Like a couple of them have died. But it's definitely hard on us. And I know that I pray a lot, like not to let my heart get hardened by it, because it makes it hard for us to want to get close to people. You know, sometimes there's times that like we want to quit because it, you know what I mean? But you don't know, sometimes at least maybe you can plant that seed. Like you never know that maybe there's something that you said to them along the way that while they were there that maybe they'll remember, you know what I mean? Or, you know, maybe change their mind, you know? And then there's just that one that gets it, and that makes it all worthwhile, you know, for me anyway.
We just had, not to interrupt you, but we just had a recent, basically graduate from the program, and he was here today, and he got his own apartment, and, you know, we had multiple success stories now. Guys getting married, it was my house manager, he's out on his own. But we have a simple formula at the Hope House, and this is how we deal with those choices that you said. Our formula, first of all, is a safe environment. That, you know, it isn't us at all that does this, like Pastor Jordan was saying this morning. All we really do is provide a safe place and a formula for these guys to follow, and women. And when you don't follow that formula, we try to get you back on that path. Give, you know, mercy and grace a lot. But once we have resistance from somebody to where it's come down to a decision that they're just not going to follow the path that we're on, which is pray in the morning, go to meetings, have a sponsor and use him, step work, home group, pray at night. Obviously, you know, church. We are active 7 days a week. We're at meetings 5 days a week, church twice a week, usually. And that's the formula. And I tell you what, though, it started with one guy, and we've had hundreds come through now, I would say. Almost probably 100, if not over 100. I'd have to look. But we've planted a lot of seeds, man. And a lot of seeds. I didn't, you know, all I know is I'm doing what I did in the beginning, and I want people to follow me. And we just took a picture outside, and I sent it to you. And just from one little call from Charity Warner, Charity Hubber, then we came, and then there's that whole picture of all the guys behind us, and then how that affects their family and their recovery and their children. Just the ripple effect, man. It's actually humbling to look at it. It's a little bit hard to talk about again because my pride wants to get in the way. I want to stand up and say I did this, you know, but we really don't have a hand in it. I mean, we just drive here. Heck, God told me a couple months ago, he said, yeah, you want to be real prideful, I'm taking your driver's license. Son of a gun, they took my driver's license for the next year. You know what I mean? But that didn't stop me. You know, we delegated and we're out here living our life, man. I just want to say that if there's anyone struggling with addiction and have nowhere to go or no one to reach out to, you could reach out to this church and get a hold of us, we have a lot of resources that we can give you and get you into treatment or into mental health, and we have the resources. We can't fix anybody. We're not doctors or anything like that, but we can sure load you up with the resources and help you get there, because too many people are dying. There's been multiple people. There was a young lady that was just sitting at our Bible study just a month ago, and her life is lost now. She's gone. And there was another one that was, we just had a little get together, and I don't want to say their names, but they decided to use again, and this fentanyl out here today is vicious, man, and I would love for the churches to come together and talk about it and see what we can do about it. But I do know that Crosspoint, we're doing our part. We're definitely doing our part.
Yeah, and we meet here every Sunday evening at 6 p.m., right? So if anybody is looking for an outlet or just somebody to listen or a point to say yes, because just coming through the door, God takes it from there, right? So
Step one, walk through the door. It's not shameful today to admit that you're broken. It is not shameful, and that's what this church, I could not believe that you could walk into this church in your pajamas if you wanted to. No one says a word. They hug you and say welcome, and I don't want to pretend like I'm okay. I don't want to dress up a garbage can, because inside, man, I am still, I'm struggling with depression as we speak. Self-hate, a lot of stuff like that. But there's only one way that I get through that, and that's Jesus Christ, man. And my faith in God that it's all going to be okay, because the storm that I'm in, I know that I'm going to get out of. There's an end game to this, and I believe that we're always in a storm in one way or another. We're either facing one, in one, or getting out of one. It's how you deal with that storm.
So, in my mind, I'm thinking of ripples or waves, right? And if you're riding those waves, one moment you're on the top and you can sort of see pretty far away in any direction, right? And you can sort of see the direction that you're heading or the direction that you want to head. But then there's times that whenever you're down in those low points or those valleys, right, you can't see what's around you except for pretty high water or pretty high negativity or positive, like whatever you're going on in your life at that moment, right? So in those moments, on the highs and on the lows, what keeps your focus on where you feel God is calling you to?
It's funny, I'll speak first on this one real quick.
You speak first every time.
I do. I'm sorry. I do. I'm sorry.
Make sure you leave that part in there.
I'm pumped up for this. But look, she is an RN. I am a truck driver. I can do a whole lot of other things for a lot more money than what we're doing right now. She does not work in the medical field. She works in recovery. I'm working in recovery. And how we get through those, in my perspective, is helping others. There is no better feeling than helping others.
What was the question?
How do you keep focused and keep going in the direction that God is calling you to?
So I honestly have to kind of meditate. I got to slow down and meditate, because I actually kind of just went through that where, sometimes I get overwhelmed with a lot of stuff, and sometimes I just have to stop and I have to listen for a while, to what I'm being called to do. You know what I mean? That prayer and meditation really is, because I feel like sometimes in those storms I get overwhelmed, and that's when I want to kind of do what I want to do. So that's definitely when I have to listen for what God's telling me to do. So yeah.
Sometimes I hear it and I don't want to do it.
That's good. Yeah. Because
I know it's disobedient, but listen, man, there's times that I am just always asking and never listening. And once I'm told, I'm like, that wasn't God, that was me saying that. I struggle with that.
To be honest with you, I do as well, and probably a lot more people in the church probably do, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we like what is comfortable. And typically what's comfortable is what we know or what we can control, right? I can control whether or not I move that, or I can control whether or not I sit in this chair or that chair. I know what's comfortable for me. But there's a lot of times that God says, this is what I need you to do, and it's going to take you outside of that comfort zone, or it's going to put you in a place that you're going to have to rely on Him or trust Him for that next step, right? And you're right, those are the times that it's kind of like, you know what, that wasn't God telling me to do that, because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right,
But it doesn't have to make sense to you.
You know, I'm going to get a little bit raw right here. You know, I've been in a season where I'm saying I'm shutting down the Hope House. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's all, you know, it's all due to financial reasons, you know. Car payments, house payments, you know. I'm now stepfather, you know, kids around, how are we going to, you know, school clothes. And believe me, at this point in the game, Hope House does not make money. It does not make any money as far as paying back, you know, all the bills there and stuff like that. And every single month when I stayed true through the storm of wanting to close down the Hope House and just quit helping people and go make huge money, everything gets paid. Everything gets paid. And, you know, that's she said it to me this morning, you know, because that's a lot of what I struggle with now is, you know, financial security, wanting what we're doing to pay for itself, you know. And I tell you what, man, and he shows up, and every time I'm like, I'm done with this, I get a call from a rehab. I got 3 more guys for your house. I'm like, oh. No, you know. And that's God showing up for me. I don't know about you, but she works in a house full of 16 women, then got to come home and deal with 14 men and 6 women. Let me tell you what, emotionally draining. Whew.
So, piggybacking on that, emotionally draining, how do you deal with that? Like, okay.
It's something new to me, honestly, because, yeah, it's definitely something new to me because you get like to a point in your sobriety, really like, you know, like where they say like this pink cloud, you know what I mean? Like it's all new, everything's new and exciting, you know what I mean? And then now like all that's starting to wear off, and you know, you're just helping others, but like I'm not being filled up in places because like all day I'm going and I'm helping everybody else, but I'm not getting help. No one's pouring into me. I'm giving everything out. So at the end of the day, I'm depleted, and then, you know, like I don't have that time for myself, and I don't have like the time that I want for like my kids or my house or things like that. So I'm just trying to still find that balance, you know. So I'm just looking for like other areas. That's like why, like, you know, making sure I make it here is important to me. But like emotionally trying to, you know, I remember they preached here about like your emotional, your tanks, like your 5 tanks, and making sure that's filled up. So I'm still trying to figure all that out, how to make sure I'm filled up in all those areas, because, you know, that's how you get burnt out, you know. So, you know, for me, it's a lot of times like talking to different supports who can fill me up, you know, in those areas, or hitting different meetings, you know, who, you know, just people who can pour back into me, basically, you know, to fill me up so I can give back to other people. Yeah, but it's
So what would you say to somebody, or how would you handle somebody that says, hey man, I'm in my addiction because my dad did this or my mom did this, right? You touched on a little bit about being molested for 3 years, right? You could very easily ride that train for the rest of your life, and that's just who you are because of that defining moment in your life, right? So you made a decision based off of somebody else's ripples that affected you. So growing up in a house, maybe your dad took advantage of you, maybe your sister, maybe your brother, whatever. So if somebody just writes it off, well, I am that way just because my dad was, or I'm that way because my mom did this. What would you say to that person? Or how would you sort of counsel that person to say, no, you can change, or no, you don't have to do that?
It all started with me with forgiveness. I wasn't set free until I forgive the people who wronged me as a child, including my father. I'm not saying that I was in, a bad, I was raised, I always had everything I needed, and stuff like that. My dad and mom did the best they could. But there was some things that, emotionally scarred me. And I thought I was going to carry that around the rest of my life. And it started with forgiveness for me. I would say if I was sitting in front of somebody that, asked me about how I got over that, I didn't until I forgave the guy who did it. Because the ripples from that moment in my life caused a lot of anger, resentment, and fear. And I'm dealing with that today. And I'm on step 7 in Life Recovery Bible and in the Big Book. And my character defects, I think, was formulated, a lot of them from my childhood. You know what I mean? And you can't be set free if you're letting people rent space in your head and your heart. You just can't. Carry that bitterness, man. And it was eating me alive my whole life. And then the next storm comes. I get sober and clean. And now the storm of, oh my goodness, look what I did to my parents. Look what I did to every relationship I was ever in. Anything like that. And I had to give it all to God, man. And I know, there's some non-believers out there that will say, why are you using God as a crutch? It's not my crutch, man. It's my source. It's my source to freedom and peace. If you looked from the outside in at our life, you would say you guys are crazy for what you're doing, but I find peace in it.
I would agree with that, to be honest with you, because you don't necessarily really have to find a reason or try to explain, right? It's just He is peace, and He is love. He doesn't promise that everything is going to be okay. He doesn't promise that it's going to be perfect or it's going to be fixed the minute that you come in or the minute that you say yes, right? But He does promise that He's going to love you. He does promise you a future. And with your willingness, He's willing to use you, right? I mean, that's what you are. Right? Anybody can say yes, but it's yes with a willing heart, right? Because I think that's also something else that separates people is everybody's willing, but nobody's willing to, like you said, answer that yes, what God wants you to do. That's sort of what y'all are walking in. And you might not see, like Jordan said, the ripples or the effects of your ripples now, but you might be somebody, what'd you say, or was that called you about coming to church? Charity. So you might be somebody's charity in the future. You don't even know. You know what I mean? Because you're sticking to it, you're living it, you're walking it, and you don't know what that looks like.
Thing, like outside of what we do, I've witnessed, like my sister repair her marriage because of like seeing my faith, and like my niece, and now like bringing my kids to church. I haven't brought my oldest to church yet, but my youngest being able to come to church, and having like now my dad and my stepmom reading like devotionals now, you know what I mean? So like just because I got sober, and them seeing how I've been changed, how they're changed now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's such an amazing thing, like you're saying, like the ripples, you know what I mean? It can go in so many different directions.
Yeah, it can, and some of them may never know. Like this video, right? This podcast. Reach somebody that we never meet. But answering the yes, sit here and sort of not really lay it all out there, but sort of talk about what it's like to be, right? Because there's people within our church, in our community, that same struggles, but they haven't gotten to that point yet that they've given it all to them, right? Because on both ends of the spectrum, giving your all, whether it was in a bad way or a good way. There's a lot of people within church that skate by with just comfortable and I can dabble with drinking, dabble with this, or I can dabble with that, and maybe they never get to that point. Maybe they can continue to do that for the rest of their life. But there's that one. So, like, I can't do that, right? And I would encourage people to not do that, because we all have a beast or a monster inside of us, and we don't know who or what that is until you start feeding it, right? The problem is a lot of people don't know how to control that once they wake it up.
Zone of craving is exactly what it's called, and it's a real thing. But I also believe the second you put any mood or mind-altering chemical in your body, you are instantly spiritually separated. That's just my belief, because I walked through it, and I never had clarity in my life. I was on maintenance. I tried to only smoke weed. I tried everything, because I was the dirtiest of junkies. That's what they say. Oh, you're an IV user. People want to separate. A user's a user. Let me tell you something. We put down the drugs, and we're still addicts. We are still addicted. We're not addicted to drugs and alcohol today. We are fighting an addiction problem, and it's between our ears. That's where it lies.
And the problem is not the drug or the alcohol. You know what I mean? The problem, like you said, is the drug and the alcohol is just a symptom of the problem. That's what we're doing to mask the pain that we had. And you touched on, like you said about trauma earlier, like I had heard something a little bit ago, like your trauma, my trauma, his trauma may not have been something, like catastrophic, you know what I mean? Like his was molestation, mine was never really even anything crazy, but it was some kind of pain to me that I was trying to cover up because I didn't have the coping skills to deal with it, and then it just like snowballed, because I have that disease, and it's just like, so we just have that mindset, that problem, like we just use the drug and the alcohol to cover that up, so we put that drug and alcohol down and we still have us to deal with, so, and then that just brings on a whole other problem.
If you think about it, in your room by yourself with the lights off, that's all it is just you, right? And you have to be able to say no to that person, right? And in some cases, that was probably some of the hardest times for me, to be honest with you, is
Yeah.
to be able to say no.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I know. I remember one time I had a couple months and I was in a different town, a couple towns over, and it was in a Sheets, and I was like, walked out of the bathroom and there was, they had wine there, and I just thought, nobody would know. I'm like in another town, you know what I mean? Nobody in recovery's around here, no families around here, and here then I saw my son's father. Like, he don't even live in that town, you know what I mean? And I just feel like God placed him there, be like, go ahead, do this, and then you won't see your son, you know what I mean? But that is like the hardest time, because like you're by yourself and you have that choice now, so yeah, it's hard sometimes.
Or is music, Bible, verses, scripture, all that kind of stuff, like what do you use to hold on to that sort of, in those moments that you're sort of struggling, contemplating like what it used to be versus what you're going through, and could try to numb the pain, but you don't necessarily get rid of it. But what do you use as far as like your Bible or your music? What kind of verses or what kind of phrases, or what is that for you?
There's a lot of little simple like phrases that we use in recovery, which come out of the Bible, a lot of them. But my biggest one is the Serenity Prayer. Okay. It keeps me alive. it reminds me that Jesus died on the cross for me. And you know, I never knew that. I never knew when I stepped foot in this church that, like Matthew, John, all that stuff, is separate books in the Bible. Is separate perspectives in the Bible.
Really?
No, I had no idea.
Huh.
I had no idea. And you know, when you walk in and then it's kind of like people walking into recovery. They have no clue what to do. No clue. And I got to meet them where they're at, because whenever I start, you know, jamming down their throat, this is what you got to do, and they're sitting there like, what is a sponsor? I remember the first time someone said get a sponsor, I started thinking about what gas station I could go to ask them to sponsor me. Like as a motocross sponsor. It's pretty funny, man. And I'm like, what are you talking about, a sponsor? And you know, education is huge. Like self-education in the Bible, listening when you go somewhere. I could come to this church. I've seen people that I brought to this church that has never took a thing out of here. They sat on their phone. They slept. They came because I made them. And they're not here anymore. And I can look out, and because you know, mostly we sat in the same spot. I can see the people that is receptive to this and take it in, and that's what saves me. I mean, I'm receptive to the word of Jesus Christ, and I'll tell you right now, I don't know any of it. You know, I just don't. I'm learning, and I'm educating myself, and that's what saved my life this time. Listening, man. You know, I talk a lot, but I also listen. And sometimes it hurts, you know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to do the right thing, and I don't know, man. These worship songs are completely different than I ever thought. When I describe our church to somebody, I'll say, hey, it's like going to a rock concert. You know what I mean? Because that's really what attracts them at first. And I keep going back to this, so God must want me to continue to say this. After all that fades, you know, I'm going to use JJ for an example, and I hope he's watching because he's doing well today, and he will be back. But we were sitting in the second row, and I looked over at JJ, and he was jamming, and he was worshiping, and he was getting baptized, and he was doing all the right things, and really, really involved. But he wasn't listening. Because when the lights faded, the smoke faded, and there was nothing but the Bible, he wasn't in it. And he's not with us anymore. He's not with the Hope House. But the seed was planted here, because he called me just a couple days ago and said, I can't wait to come back to Crosspoint. And he's clean and sober, coming up on 3 months. But that's a prime example for me. You know what I mean? Like, he was very involved, but he was not receptive.
Like Jordan talked this morning, right? It's about, what are you focusing on? Is it what Elevation is doing, what Josh is doing? Are you chasing after the man, or are you chasing after God? Right? Because if you're not founded in that, in some cases, the littlest things will come along and sort of rock the boat in a way that sort of throws you off your trajectory. Just the smallest bit. Then all of a sudden you look back and you're like miles from where you were, and you didn't even realize that it happened. Right? Because in my mind, that's the way it worked for me, right? You just start with the littlest thing, and it could be like watching a show or listening to a song, and before you know it, months later, you're like, whoa, time out. What? You know, and in most cases, I hear this a lot too. Well, they just quit talking to me, or they don't call anymore, or they don't do this, or they don't do that. And it's like, time out. They're still where they were. Where are you? You know?
and they say, well, who moved? You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
like a good one, you know,
Yeah.
because God didn't move, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
So,
right. So he
yeah.
says he's the constant
Right.
in our
Yeah.
sea of life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if he's our constant in the sea of life, in a lot of cases we're making those ripples or our waves ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're really the ones that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning and I say my little prayer. God, take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery, show me how to live. Your will be done. Very short. And then anywhere throughout the day, man, I could start leaning away from God and my day gets really, really bad. That's what I've been going through. I mean, she can witness to that, man. Like there's been days that, you know, everything isn't so perfect. And then I hear a song like Fear is a Liar. You know what I mean? And I had no idea what it meant, you know. Now I'm like, it is a liar, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, here's another good one, okay? I remember Same God come out. And, you know, I didn't know. I thought, you know, Jesus was getting, you know, we got presents at Christmas. It's basically my thought of Jesus whenever I come up. And when they come out and said, Same God, and it clicked one day in church, I thought, oh my goodness. He's the same God that was, you know, God over Jacob and Mary. And I'm like, that can't be. That's not true. He's not that old. I mean, if I told you the real thoughts in my head, man. So that's just, you know, the worship music for me, man, and connecting the dots. And here's a big one for me too. When I got into recovery, I believe everybody is in recovery for something. Whether it's anger issues, you know, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, we are all trying to not do something. And when you have a group of people helping you not do that something, it is so much easier to cope with life. And whenever I entered into the program and I started reading the books that are provided for us, in its steps, there's 12 steps. And I never put two and two together. They are all from the Bible. All they did was number them, you know? And it is such an amazing experience to just...
So it's like you said, right? It's recovery is a group of people that are coming alongside of each other to sort of help fill in the, let me help you, let me carry you, I'm your support, right? And that's what Crosspoint is.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about it, it is literally, I don't care what you're coming through the door with, but I am here for you to throw your arm around my shoulder to bring you to this altar.
Absolutely. Jordan said it the best this morning. Come as you are, but don't stay the way you was. That, you know, and that's every single day. I just want to be better than I was yesterday, you know, and that's amazing. We should put that on our sign out there.
Yeah, so it's like at the moment that you said yes, your ripples went from being self-centered and wanting what you wanted to starting to push people towards Jesus, right? And now it's like that's the goal, right? To help people get better, but then also to help them find their purpose, right? That's...
Bring them to the water, man, and they have to drink it. Did you ever think you'd be sitting here
No.
today helping people, doing a little podcast for Crosspoint? It's an amazing journey, man. It's an amazing journey.
And it's forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
This will be out there in digital space forever.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that real quick. I had someone reach out to me from like South Carolina who watched my just videos and things that I post from other podcasts and other stuff, you know, and not just the Hope House, but they knew the Hope House was the center of the posting. And they reached out to me clear from down there and was telling us about our story and ended up sending someone up here. The guy that drove truck, you know, and he went back down after after he left, and it's just amazing how far the ripples can go. I have a cousin in California, and I haven't spoke to or seen in person in years, and haven't spoke to her, like texted her ever. And after being here about a year and her watching online, which I never knew she was watching, she reached out to me and started messaging me on Messenger and telling us how good of a job we were doing. And then, you know, she wanted to come alongside the Hope House and helped us out, you know, and it was an amazing experience because, you know, those are the people that wrote me off because they knew what I was about. I have cousins in Florida doing the same thing.
Well, I think that's the difference in playing church and being the church, right? It's, in my mind, that's sort of like Big C church. Get outside of the realm of Crosspoint. Like Jordan said today, this isn't ours, right? This is God's. This podcast isn't ours, it's God's. So if we think Big C church, it's crazy to think like how far or how big or what he's able to do. I mean, he literally took people like Moses, who did not like to be in front of people, right? Who did stutter, and yet he used him to lead thousands of people, right? David, a man after God's own heart, right? Had a man killed after he slept with the man's wife. Like, just because you have a background doesn't mean that you're not valuable or usable at any stage of life. You know?
I'm not defined by my choices today.
No.
I identify as an addict just to help others who's never been here relate to me.
If you think about it, you're limited by your no.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you're limited by what you say yes or no to. Right?
Right.
And God does the rest.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you both coming in and sort of diving into what this looks like and what the ripple effects of addiction, or good or bad, right? So I do appreciate that. Before we close out, is there anything that you would want to say or that you haven't said already?
No, just if anyone's struggling in our community, you know, reach out to anybody. But I want to make known that we will always take your call. You know, come to the church, come to the Bible study at 6 p.m. It is focused on addiction, but it's not just about addiction. You know, it can be family issues, pride issues. Just reach out, because when is the next one going to be the last one? We've been watching it every day for the past 16 months. There's been more deaths than weddings, I can tell you that. And just reach out to local resources. You know, you don't have to stay stuck in that depression, anxiety, or addiction. There is a way out, and it is worth it. What about you?
Yeah.
Check mark the box.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah, that first step's the biggest one, man. Just take it.
Well, again, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Ripples on CP Talks. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and make sure to follow along, as we'll be bringing a new episode every week. And again, thank you, and see you next week.